everyone, and welcome to Meet the Bastards! Our first contestant is a perky, pervy little creep who gets superpowers from his swallowing his dick until he's driven by primordial rage to pound his enemies into paste. Meet Mr. K. Corona! Our second participant is a lanky, lovable martyr who time and time again will let down those closest to him to stand squeaky clean next to his ideals rather than owning up to his promises. Meet Mr. Masaru Kato! And finally, the other character featured on the front cover, a yearning young lady who consistently uses others without half a thought, justifying it by how her mom used her for bragging rights and tossed her aside. Meet Miss K. Kishimoto! No, seriously. Even the majority of the minor characters in this are all mosaic bastions of pure hypocrisy. The main antagonist and title character, Gantz, who is the most bastard of all characters, even always introduces newcomers to their new hell by calling them bastards. And why am I now going to praise the ever-living hell out of this show? It's because it is the perfect petri dish of sociology, psychology, anthropology, and gore. And it is entirely self-aware. Amidst the sexual fever dreams, mutilation, and savagery splattered across the screen that can share a universe with Kite, it's fueled by a desire to navigate the duality's paradox. Freud posits that unconscious thoughts and desires motivate the behavior of your conscious mind, but they're not the same as your conscious self. This is more directly expressed in what society demands versus personal desires. This is the same dichotomy present in works like Yu Yu Hakusho, Death Note, and Parasite the Maxim. In those anime, they centralize their core duality conflict primarily in a handful of people. Gantz presents it across the board, and it's ironically more subtle than those other series considering it's also the loudest and the final episode is preachy as all fuck. You get to see every shade of each of these characters, every hidden, heartless, unsavory, uncivilized bit. I think the most accurate description that I could give these characters is naked with translucent skin. That means that everything that you wish to see, you see, but now you know everything you don't want to know. Gantz is rather elaborate in how each character arc is handled, each exploring unique perspectives, biases, and consequences in a hyper-real sci-fi gladiatorium where characters are laid bare and butchered, all seemingly for the titular asshole's sense of biting amusement. Yes, this series also explores hyper-reality and existentialism. What is real and what is not have no real clear distinction, and each character is each other's hell in some way, whether they realize it or not. Kei and Kato are childhood friends, separated years ago, and by a twist of fate end up meeting again when rescuing a drunken man who had fallen on a set of subway tracks. Shortly after being decapitated by the train, they're in a room with a mishmash of other assholes, where they also meet Kishimoto and Johiro Nishi. More on him in a minute. We are then introduced to a giant black sphere who puts the plot in motion, Gantz. The plot is that they must be clad in skin-tight protective suits and hunt specific aliens blending into society and eliminate them with fairly overdramatic weapons. Screaming and guts ensue. And to bring that point home with a big-ass spoiler, Nishi is killed off in probably one of the most heart-wrenching scenes that not only is so because of the emotional baggage, but also for the gore. Crying when you've got no eyes ain't pretty. Now after all of this, who the flying fuck is Gantz? Well, simply, he's the dude in the ball with the guns who can't spell and makes bad puns. But to be direct, if you're going off the anime alone, we have no goddamn clue of what else besides the fact he is a seemingly omniscient entity, copying humans the instant before their deaths, to use them in an arena hunting extraterrestrials. Hey, I don't judge on personal taste, but fuck dude, that's a convoluted kink. It's very clear that he isn't human, but what his endgame might be is completely dark. If you read the manga, it concluded in 2013 with Kei and Kato preventing an alien mothership crashing into the Earth, so something to do with that, or stopping that, or something, I suppose. It was released in 2004 by Gonzo, Fuji TV, and ATX. And I like to say that this period of time is probably the greatest of Gonzo's entire production history until this point. They would release Gantz, Samurai 7, Basilisk, Speedgrapher, and Trinity Blood all within a year of each other. They also released Desert Punk and Burst Angel, which I wasn't a fan of, but they have some serious merit and they're well produced. The show was directed by Ichiro Otano. Yes, I'm American, I can't say Japanese names, sorry. Who had started started as an animator on Mobile Suit Gundam, but by this time he had directed the first Violence Jack film, Battle Royale High School, and was making a name in CG animation with Space Pirate Mito and Arjuna. I teeter on the fence about most of his work, but in Gantz, his blending of mediums and techniques to create a stylistic atmosphere that's uncomfortably tense and immersive. Oh, it can still come across as hokey as shit, I mean, come on. This was the same year that Koshiro Otomo came out with Steam Boy, so some of the CG animation in this is inexcusable. And say what you want about Steam Boy, but that movie is visually orgasmic. Masashi Sogo, known at that time for Tokyo Mew Mew, was brought in to lead the writing staff, but I know most of y'all recognize that name from Fairy Tail. All of this was run by Taishi Nishimura, one of Takashi Miike's J-horror producers. Yeah, starting to see why this series is fucked? Did you know that this show's CG director is now on Sailor Moon Crystal? It's funny how that works out. Naoki Onda's character designs are mostly generic, but work just enough to give the vibe that something isn't quite right. Though his alien designs are pretty damn interesting and become more so throughout the series, these designs teaming with his inconsistent distorted animation and constant use of fisheye lens perspectives, Gantz's overall visual vibe is nauseating. Kinda like if Ralph Bakshi rotoscoped a Larry Clark movie. Cutaways to surrounding elements such as lampposts and crosswalk lights help bring home a stylized restraint during the series' more intense or brutal moments, which is rather peculiar considering the graphicness of the rest of the show. But yet, somehow, it works. Transitions between commingling scenes can be a bit rough though, and there are several scenes that are obvious low priority parts of the budget, usually sticking in flashbacks or slowly panning environment shots with a lot of exposition. However, the combination of the score and sound design is what truly brings everything together. This is Corpse Party all over again. The industrial music is intense and hand-wringing, sounds of surrounding areas exasperate the torment, such as incidental laughter during a gruesome death or a couple on a date easily ignoring depressingly distressed characters because they cannot see those participating in the game. The ending song grew on me, eventually. And timed with the meaning of the ending sequence, it fits, but my gut always tells me it's not supposed to be here. The opening track is perfect, sporadic and crazy, but the end, it just never sat well. What also doesn't sit well is incessant inner monologues. Most of it is from Kei, though it shifts perspectives to a few of the others at times, but his whiny inner monologue grates against the inside of my skull worse than Holden Caulfield. But that's the point. It's there to wear on you, to beat you down, and it's not necessarily what he says, it's how he says it and his rationale. Sometimes you agree with him immensely with his point of view and hate how he whines about it. And then other times you see his point and sorta hate yourself because you think or have thought that way too. Though I will take Gantz over Catcher in the Rye any day. Fuck J.D. Salinger. Supporting characters like Kato's brother and aunt, Kei's friends, Kishimoto's mother and sister, many of the other dead people with a whole lot of meatness. They're as deep as Yucca Flats, never wavering off a soul note. And frankly, despite what their stories might be, they're boring. They didn't rush through their backstories like they did with Elfenly, but it's still superficial as shit.
I'm gonna kick your ass!
Just ignore him!
Like 0 to 120 kind of people, and in turn some of the character traits that we're supposed to accept for the main cast without much other reason than just do it. I only guess it's for the sake of time and impact, but fuck, it amps up the carnage. When tensions rise, so does the blood. But at the same time works in a very Seven Deadly Sins sort of way, meaning not at all. There is such an inconsistency with the pacing in and around each scene that it's impossible to ever understand how long anything takes, and half of the damn show has an actual ticking clock. Now, with all the flaws and quirks of Gantz, we get down to the one element that separates it all from the rest in comparison to series of similar structure and theme: emotion. Raw, ugly, uncompromised emotion. I mean, there's no clean, gushy Miyazaki or orchestral swelly angel beats tears in this one. These characters are put through the ringer before they meet the Reaper, and even Grimm would be like, "Ah!" Each of these characters are brought to their lowest point you can think possible, which then Gantz proceeds to cut a hole in the bedrock and sink them down even further. The small instances of comedy that pepper throughout each arc are always in the vein of the overall mood of the episode, which is always depressing, dejected, and eventually dead. Everything about this series crawls in your skin, and the show wants it. It thrives on it. And at the very end, it holds up a mirror to you and says, "So what about you? Are you any different than these people?" Because you're not. And it's hard to deny the validity of the societal, moral, and ethical question raised in the trials, traps, tricks, and tribulations in this sick soiree of suffering and sadness that is Gantz. This is not a fun show, nor is it designed to be. The elements of violence, sex, smut, and all things exploitive are designed to be ugly every way you look at it. Whether through a majority opinion or a singular view, it explores all perspectives whether you want to or not. Overall, I cannot help but recommend this series, but that doesn't mean everyone is going to take to it. Not a fucking chance. I usually like this cerebral mindfuck and social commentative stuff in my anime, but this pushes it in areas that you are really gonna squirm more than usual. It's about confronting our stark realities of how shitty we are as a collective civilization and to swallow our own bile. And for all its flaws, it's a pretty damn effective anime and one of my personal favorites. Check it out when you have the constitution to do so. But, you know, I have done a few titles the last few episodes that have been on my personal bucket list, so I think I should get back to the fan request. So, next one on the wheel is Outlaw Star. I can dig it. Subscribe to our shit. Peace.